Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your channel of Math and Engineering Made Easy. Today, we are going to go over part two. In fact, I'm taping it on the same day, a few hours later, but I will post it next Monday, probably, or Tuesday. So I may be out of town for Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Anyway, we'll see. So for part two, you have 8 questions and each one of them is worth 2 credits. In the first one, they tell you to factor this polynomial completely. Usually, it's like almost invariably when you have 4 terms, you can either combine the first 2 and the second 2, or the first and third and second and fourth. Do you know why? Because if you take the 1 and 2 together, the 3 and 4 together, you see the difference in power is 1. So usually you will end up with something in common that you factor out. But the difference between the 2 terms is like this is 3, this is 2, this is 1, this is 0. Or you take first and third, difference in degrees is 2. And second and fourth, the difference is also 2. So it's really up to you. Both of them work. So it doesn't matter. Let's say I'm going to take the first 2 and then the second 2. So here I have x squared can be taken out as a common factor, and that leaves me with x plus 4. And then if I take the negative 9 out, that also would be x plus 4. Do you see what I'm saying? Notice that someone else would say, no, I'm going to take the first and the third. The common is x, and that leaves you with x squared minus 9. And then second and fourth, I can take 4 out, and that also would leave me with x squared minus 9. If I come here now, the x plus 4 is a factor, and I get x squared minus 9. Here, x squared minus 9 is a factor, and if I factor out, I get x plus 4. Same exact thing. Then you have to see that the 9 is 3 squared. So that's a difference of 2 squares. So you end up with x plus 4 times x minus 3 times x plus 3. Here, it's the same thing. You have the difference in 2 squares first. So x minus 3 times x plus 3 times x plus 4. So either or, both of them will give you the same result, and it doesn't take long. Okay. Now, when we move to the next question, notice here I found the original test. So the previous one I printed out. So part 1 I printed out online, and then I found this when I was looking. So I remember having that test, but anyway, so that's why I'm working here. Determine if x plus 4 is a factor of that. Again, for the zillionth time, you can use either long division, which we did twice, or synthetic division, which we did once. So I will use synthetic division again. I have 2, 10, 4, and negative 16. And x plus 4, if that's a factor, it means x equals negative 4. So I'm going to write negative 4 here. The 2 comes down, times negative 4 is negative 8. The sum is 2 again. Times negative 4 is negative 8. When I add them, I get negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. 0. Yes, it is. Since dividing the polynomial by x plus 4 yielded no remainder. So that means it's divisible by that, right? Like, and you divide any 2 numbers, if you don't get the remainder, it means it's divisible by that. Okay, an initial investment of $1,000 reaches a value V of t for future. According to the model, V of t is that, meaning in t years. So this basically, if the interest rate is 1%, you place or you deposit $1,000 in a bank that pays 1% a year for 4 years, you get that determine the average rate of change to the nearest dollar per year of this investment from year 2 to year 7. Nearest dollar per year. Okay, so first of all, I know that the average I have to find V of 7 minus V of 2 over 7 minus 2. So that's dollars, that's year, you get it dollar per year. So 1,000 times 1.1 raised to the 4 times 7, which is 28, minus 1,000. Again, you can factor the 1,000 out. 1.1, 2 times 4 is 8, over 5. So I can take 1,000. I can open a parenthesis and say 1.01 to the power of 28 minus 101 to the power of 8. Oh, again, I always do that. Divided by 5. That gives me $47 nearest dollar, so $48 per year. Okay. That's it. So we are done with this. Number 28. When 1 over the cube root of y squared times y to the 4th is written in the form y to the n, what is the value of n? Okay, so let's do that. First of all, if I write that as a fraction, it's 1 over y to the 2/3, right? Y to the 2/3 times y to the 4 equals y to the 4 minus, because I'm dividing this by that, I subtract 2/3. So it's y to the 12/3 minus 2/3 is y to the 10/3. So n equals 10/3 or 3.33. Okay, justify your answer. Basically, you would say the cube root of that is that, and then when you divide y to power, so y to the a over y to the b, you get y to the a minus b, and that yields it. I don't know how else you justify it. The heights of the member of a ski club are normally distributed. The average height, so here is the normal distribution. The mean is 64.7 with a standard deviation of 4.3. Determine the percentage of club members to the nearest percent who are between 67, somewhere here. Yeah, 67, I know. And 72. We want this area. So I can go to distribution, normal cumulative. I think you enter the minimum first, then the maximum, comma the mean, comma the standard deviation, if I remember correctly. And then you have to multiply it by 100 because they want it as a percent. So you get 25.15 to the nearest percent. So P equals or 25%. 1/4 of the population of the ski club or members of ski club would have heights between 67 and 72 inches. Again, direct use of calculator. So we have 3 more. Okay, number 30. The explicit formula a sub n equals 6 plus 6n represent the number of seats in each row in a movie theater where n represents the row number. Rewrite this formula in recursive form. Okay. So I know if n is 1, a sub 1 equals 6 plus 6 equals 12. And then a sub n would equal, so A2, for example, would be, you add 6 to that, right? Because you're going to multiply the row number by 6. So every row would be 6 more. So all what you have to do is to say an minus 1 plus 6. That's a recursive equation. Notice that A1 is 6 plus 6 times 1, so row 1 is 12. The row 2, 6 times 2 plus 6 is 18. 6 times 3 plus 6 is 24. You always increase by 6. So pretty straightforward as a recursive one. Express 2xi to the third power minus 3y quantity square in simplest form. Again, some people would say I cube is negative I, so they rewrite it. There's no reason. You can just square, expand, and then simplify. So I know when I have x minus y or a minus b quantity square is a square, meaning 4x square I to the 6, right? 2 is square of 2 is 4, x is x square, I cube is I to the 6. Minus twice the first times the second, plus the second square, which is 9y square. I should have done the same thing anyway. I to the 6, you see that every I to the 4, you can, so R1, so you divide, you find the remainder of dividing 6 by 4. The remainder is 2, so that becomes I square or negative 1. So this is negative 4x squared. Here I have I cubed. I cubed is negative I. Times negative becomes positive I. So there is a plus and there is an I. And then you multiply the number. 2 times 2 is 4 times 3 is 12 x y. And finally, plus 9y square, and that should be it. Okay, that basically should be it. Because I cube is never negative I. Negative times negative is positive. So the I cube becomes, or the negative I cube becomes positive I. 2 times 2 times 3 is 12. I have an X, I have an Y, and that's it. Pretty straightforward also. A survey was given to 1,250 randomly selected high school students at the end of their junior year. The survey offered 4 post-graduation options. Either you go to 2-year college, 4-year college, military, or work. Of the 1,250 responses, 475 chose a 4-year college. State one possible conclusion that can be made about the population of high school juniors based on this survey. So based on this survey, we can expect to have 475 over 1,250 equals 38.38. So you can say we expect 38% of the responders or of the school, the high school students to go to a 4-year college. Well, I don't know what they want, but it seems ridiculous, but anyway. Okay, 38% is the percent because they say about the population. Yeah. Part 3 are 4 questions. Each one receives 4 credits. A researcher wants to determine if nut allergies, and milk allergies are related. So the researchers surveyed 1,500 people and asked them if they are allergic to nuts or milk or both. The survey results are like that. Determine the probability that a randomly selected survey respondent is allergic to milk. Well, since I'm going to take one from the whole 1,500, then allergic to milk would be 45. So that probability equals 45 over 1,500 is, if you simplify by 15, you get 3 over 100 or 0.03. That's the probability that if I select someone at random, that person is allergic to milk. Determine the probability that a randomly selected survey respondent is allergic to milk given that the person is allergic to nuts. So I have to calculate allergic to nuts is 15. So probability that person is allergic to milk given allergic to nuts equals the probability of M and N, the intersection of M and N. We call that the joint probability over, we call that that's the probability of the condition, right? N. So probability of M and N. Well, when here we are talking about probabilities, but we can use numbers. If you want to find the number, then when you get the probabilities, you multiply them by the total number of 1500. So in fact, you will be dividing by 1500 top and bottom, and then multiplying by 1500. That cancels the denominator. But let's do it the way, the long way. Probability of M and N, meaning allergic to milk and nuts, is 3, not 3. It's 3 divided by 1500. And the probability of nuts is 15 over 1500. These would cancel and you will get 0.2. That's the probability, right? Yeah, that's the probability. It's 0.2, 20% chance that if I'm just looking at those who are allergic to nuts, because they tell you the person is allergic to nuts. So it's like my population is only 15. These people are not allergic to nuts. So I'm saying, what is the probability that you are allergic to milk? Given that, meaning I know that you are allergic to nuts. So out of 15, I have 3. So 3 over 15 is 0.2. It's common sense, right? I thought they wanted the number, so that's why I said you will multiply by 1500 at the end, but I'm sorry, I misread the thing. Based on the survey data, determine whether nut allergies and milk allergies are independent events. Definitely not. I mean, you can see the number here is huge. If they were independent, if and only if they were independent, the probability of M and N would have been the probability of M times the probability of N. Meaning the 3 out of the 1500, is it equal to the probability of M, which is 45 over 1500, times N, which is 15 over 1500? That's 1 over 100, right? And that's 45 over 150,000. No, of course not. They are not equal. So no, they aren't. Another way to do it, by the way, is you multiply the row total by the column total and divide by 1500. If you get 3, then they would be independent. Or 3 over 1500. Of course, here you won't get that. So they are not independent. Algebraically solve for 2x equals 6 plus 2 root. I keep repeating. Every time you solve a problem that has either a square root or a natural log, because you are going to either exponentiate or square, you have to be very careful. Don't solve and stop. No, you have to check your 2 answers because one of them may be extraneous. In fact, it would be extraneous. Why? Because this equation has a unique solution. But when you square, you will have x squared. You will get a quadratic equation that has 2 solutions. So the one all of a sudden becomes 2. So one of them is extraneous. You see that? First of all, you have to move. Let's switch. So we're going to say 2 root x minus 1. I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So I get 2 root that equals 2x minus 6. And then I'm going to square both of them. 2 square is 4, and the square root and the square cancel, so you get x minus 1 equals 2x minus 6, or you can just expand and you get 4x squared minus 24x plus 36. And this is 4x minus 4. So we are going to subtract 4x from both sides and add 4 to both sides, so you get a 0. So now you will get 4x squared minus 28x plus 40 equals 0. There is no reason to work with 4 and 40 because all these numbers are divisible by 4. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. The 0 divided by 4 stays 0, and this guy becomes x squared minus 7x plus 10. Two numbers that multiply to 10 and add up to negative 7 are negative 2 and negative 5. So x minus 5 times x minus 2 equals 0. So either x equals 5 or x equals 2. Now you go back. If I say x is 5, the left-hand side would be 10. The right-hand side would be 6 plus 2 times the square root of 5 minus 1 is 6 plus 2 times the square root of 4. It's 6 plus 2 times 2. It's 6 plus 4. It's 10. Yes. Now, how about the 2? 2 times 2 is 4. Equals 6 plus something. Of course, right there you stop and you say, no, that's extraneous. Extraneous solution. But if you continue, you will see that if that had been minus, because notice when you square, you will have either plus or minus. The minus won't work. Why? Because that would be the square root of 2 minus 1. So instead of having 6 minus 2 times that, you get 6 plus that, which is 6 plus 2 times the square root of 1. The square root of 1 is 1, not plus or minus 1. That's because you created the second one by squaring. You made it 2 answers instead of 1, so that doesn't work. 6 plus 2 is 8. It should have been 6 minus 2, of course, but this doesn't work. So only one solution, x equals 5. Please, when you see a radical square root in your equation and you are solving, you have to check both answers. Okay, as I said, with natural log, sometimes you will have to do that. When you exponentiate, sometimes you get extraneous solutions also. Okay, number 35. Okay, time is not bad. During the summer, Adam saved $4,000. Adam and Betty. Okay, so Adam saved $4,000 and Betty $3,500. Adam deposited his money in bank A at an annual rate I equals 2.4% compounded monthly. This is important. Betty deposited her money in I, annual rate is 4% compounded quarterly. Write two functions that represent the value of each account after T years. Okay, so here you have to find R per month equals 2.4% over 12. Well, it's better to write it 0.024 over 12. Oh, I'm sorry, I said 4 and I wrote, so it's 0.002. I don't know why I said 0.024 and I wrote 0.025. Okay. Wait a second. I don't know what am I doing. Dividing by 12 is 0.002. This one, R per quarter, is 1%. 4% divided by 4 is 1%. So how do I find here the value after T years? Okay, So if t is the years, I would say A of t equals 4,000 times 1.002 raised to the power. Notice this is in month. A year has 12 months, and if year is t, that becomes 12t. B of t becomes 3,500 times 1.01, because that's in a quarter. So every year has 4 quarters, so t years will have 4t quarters. And these are the two equations. Using technology, determine to the nearest tenth of a year how long it will take for the two accounts to have the same amount of money in them. Okay, so you can solve for t. Either you plot two graphs and find the point of intersection like we do, or you subtract them and find the zero, which is the solution, or the zero, or you can solve it mathematically and then end up with natural log. So for example, I could say 4,000 times 1.002 to the 12t equals 3,500, 1.01 to the 40. Now dividing by 500, this would be 8, and that would be 7. Okay, and then you can take the log of both sides, so you give 12t here and 40 there, and then you divide and end up with an answer. For example, I can say 12t times log, notice log of 8 times or you can say no. Okay, you can do it this way, but it's going to be long and you have to divide, and it's better to, since they told you use technology, then it makes sense to, this was from the morning. I'm going to do the first one is 4,000 times 1.002 raised to the power of 12x. And I could subtract, as I said, or make another one, 1.01 raised to the power of 4x. In fact, as I said, there is no reason to say 3,700. I can make that 7 and make that 8 to simplify. I mean, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever, but the numbers would be smaller. So let's see if that would graph, or I need to change the window. Let me see the window. Oh, it's still drawing. Oh, that's my mistake. Okay, so I know that x minimum would be either 7 or 8. Of course, they're not equal. So we can say with 10 and maybe whatever. Oh, x, no, x, let's make it, I'm sorry, I was doing y, not x. So let's make that 0. It's not 0, so it doesn't matter. And 10, and let's make y minimum is 8 and y maximum, whatever, let's make it 20 or something and see what we get. Here's one graph. And here's the second. And you can see that they will intersect somewhere here. So you can go to calc and find the intersect. So for the first curve, maybe I am here. For the second, I am also here, whatever. 8.437. So t equals, they want it to the 10th of year, 8.4 years. It will take them 8.4 years to be the same. Again, You could solve that with log, but it's much easier since they said using technology. It's a waste of time to try to do it. Otherwise, here we have draw at least one complete cycle of a sine graph passing through the points 0 and 2. That has an amplitude of 3 and a period of pi. And a midline y equals 2. So here is the midline. Y equals 2. So if it passes through the point 0 and 2, that's the beginning of the cycle, right? This is one of them because they said draw at least one complete cycle. Okay, so if I start from here and my period is pi, then at pi, I will go back to a new cycle, right? I have to divide this into 4 pieces. I go up to max, down to middle, down to minimum, up to middle or center line. And since the amplitude is 3 and I'm at 2, so at 5, I will go here at 5 and then back to 0 and then to -1. Notice the amplitude is 3 and then to 0. So I will get something that looks like that. And that would be one cycle. You can repeat it, of course, by going here, 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 and there. And that's the second one if you want. You can do whatever, you can do one on the left, but that's basically it. Based on your graph state and interval, which the graph is increasing. So the graph is increasing from 0 to pi over 2, as well as from 3 pi over 2, I'm sorry, 3 pi over 4, and this is pi over 4 again, to pi. That's for the cycle. It's increasing from 0 to pi over 4, right? And then from 3 pi over 4, which it was at -1, up to this point if we do a cycle. Because they told you to draw a cycle. But if in our case, because I plotted 2 cycles, I should say 0 to pi over 4 union 3 pi over 4 to like this is 4 pi over 4, this is to 5 pi over 4 union 7 pi over 4 to 2 pi. If I draw only one cycle, I would use the top. If I draw 2, because they told you draw at least one complete cycle. So if you draw one complete cycle, that's enough, right? Up to this point. So you'll go from 0 to pi over 4 and then 3 pi over 4 to pi. And that would be it. If you plot 2, then because you did 2, then you have to show that it's increasing from here to here, from here to here. So you have 3 intervals where the graph is increasing. Okay, we're done with part 3. Let's look at part 4. In part 4, they said a manufacturer of sweatshirts finds that profits and costs fluctuate depending on the number of products created. Creating more products doesn't always increase profits because it requires additional costs, such as building a larger facility or hiring more workers or paying extra time. The manufacturer determines the profit function P of X in thousands of dollars is a function of the number of sweatshirts sold is that. graph y equals p of x in the interval 0 to 9. And again, here you can use your calculator. There is no reason to try to draw a table and find the value. So of course it will give you a table anyway. So let's clear that and that. And I enter this equation, negative x cubed plus 11 x squared minus 7x minus 69. And my window, I go from 0 to 9. Okay, it doesn't matter 0 to 10, that's fine. No, y minimum. Okay, wait a second. Well, the window starts at negative 69, right? So the y, maybe I say negative 70 or something. And then this should be, I don't know. Let's make 100. These are thousands of dollars. Okay, so you get something like that. Okay, and they ask, so the easiest way to do it is look at the table and find the values of at 0. I know at 0 it's negative 16. So if this is 30, that would be negative 30, negative 60, negative 90, 60, 90, 120, and so on and so forth. If this is 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And now you place the points. So I have 0 and negative 69. So that's 75. So maybe 69 would be somewhere here. At 1, I get negative 66, so slightly higher. At 2, I get negative 47. This is 45. So negative 47 maybe here. At 3, it's negative 18. That's 15. So 18 maybe here. At 4, I get positive 15. So I'm here midway between 0 and 30. At 5, I get 46. This is 45. So roughly touching 45. At 6, I have 69. This is 60. This is 75. So maybe 69 would be somewhere here. 7, I get 78. This is 75. So 78 maybe here. At 8, I get 67. So I go down a little bit again. And finally, at 9, I get 30. And then here is the plot. It's going up. And then it starts turning down. So that it would be pretty much the shape. Over the given interval, state the coordinates of the maximum of P and round all values to nearest integer. Maximum of P looks like it's at 7, right? So maximum occurs at x equals 7. Meaning 7,000 sweatshirts. And the profit P of 7 is roughly $78,000. Again, you can, maybe it's not exactly, do they want it to the nearest integer? Yeah, so probably 7 would be correct. If you want to check, you can find maximum, which is 4. And I say the left is here, the right, I would just go make sure I am on the lower decreasing end. This is my guess, 7, exactly 7. So it's like you don't need to round, and the y is 78, like we said, but they are in thousands of sweatshirts and thousands of dollars. Explain what this point represents. This means that in order to maximize profits, the company needs to produce and sells, make sure that they sell them, because if they don't sell them, of course, that would be like inventory and it's not a profit, right? And sells 7,000 sweatshirts for a profit of 78 grand. Determine how many sweatshirts to the nearest whole sweatshirt the manufacturer would need to produce in order to first make a positive profit. Okay, so we have here to find the zero, because at the zero, they break even. They need roughly maybe 3,200 or 33 or 34. We don't know, something between 3,000 and 4,000. Again, go to your calculator, select second calc, and find the zero, because that would tell you where they break even. So they want you to do the left bound, go slightly in the negative, and then slightly to the positive. That's the right. This is my guess. And the zero occurs at 3.5. In order to first make a positive profit. So, and it's the to the whole shirt. So really, if I want to say they break even at, to the nearest shirt would be 3,549, right? They need to produce at least this number of sweatshirts. That would produce a profit, because really 3.5488 is the break even. Anything like a slightly higher value will produce profit. So that's when they first produce, right? They need to produce in order to first make a positive profit. It would be at 35.49 because we rounded up. Of course, they will not be making any profit. You see that y equals 0. But if I make that 3, if I make, so you see, they would be making a funny thing. So in other words, a value, and then I'm going to say x is 3.549. Look at y, $5.33. So the whole company would be making a profit of $5.33. But theoretically speaking, that's the number of shirts or sweatshirts that would first produce a profit. It's a meager profit, but it's a profit nevertheless. And did I have, no, that concludes the test. And I hope you got everything. If you see that I made a mistake somewhere or something you didn't understand, or I went over it quickly, it's confusing you, just please don't hesitate to let me know. Send me a note, a comment, or a question, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, I wish you all the best in your Regents exam. Now you have 3 exams to check. There were like minor errors. If you go into the comments, you will see that, you know, it was, I was doing it quickly. In the second test, I think there was one error. And in the first one, I don't know if there was an error or something that was done, maybe it could have been done easier or something. Otherwise, as I said, if I don't hear back from you, just make sure I wish you all the best. And I hope you do great in your Regents exam. Thanks, and hope to see you in the future.